Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so if you're starting a business in Massachusetts, or maybe you're just looking to rebrand an existing one, you might think you already know exactly how business registration works. But honestly, Massachusetts has a surprisingly unique system for registering a trade name that literally catches entrepreneurs completely off guard all the time. Today, I'm going to be your expert navigational guide through this local maze. We're going to break down exactly how to legally operate under a different business name in the Commonwealth. Let's get into it.
So, let's start with the absolute biggest misconception out there. Where exactly do you file a Massachusetts DBA? If you're thinking, oh, obviously the Secretary of State, well, you'd actually be wrong. You see, in most states, there's a centralized database, but in Massachusetts, there is absolutely no statewide registry for trade names. Instead, this whole process is handled locally. And by locally, I mean across 351 different city and town clerks. Yeah, you heard that right. 351 separate municipalities, and every single one has its own specific rules.
Here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, what is a Mass DBA? Number 2, choosing your name. 3, our registration guide. 4, avoiding common DBA mistakes. 5, renewals and tips. And finally, number 6, the conclusion and our legal disclaimer. Starting off with Section 1, what is a Mass DBA? Defining the basics. So, while the rest of the country casually calls it a DBA, which is short for Doing Business As, Massachusetts actually officially calls this a business certificate. According to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 110, Section 5, it is a local registration required for any person, partnership, or corporation conducting business under any title other than their true legal name. Now, it's really important to get this. It doesn't create a brand new company. Instead, its primary purpose is actually consumer protection. It creates a public record that identifies exactly who is running the business, so consumers and creditors know exactly who they're dealing with. And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Think of it like this. On the left side, you have your, boring legal name. If you're a sole proprietor, that's literally just your personal name, like John Smith. If you formed an entity, it's the exact name on your formation documents. Say Anderson Tech Solutions, LLC. But on the right, we have your catchy, brand-friendly trade name. Let's go with Boston Cloud Pros. So, if Anderson Tech Solutions, LLC wants to operate publicly as Boston Cloud Pros, they are legally required to bridge that gap by filing a business certificate.
So who exactly needs to file this thing? Well, if you're a sole proprietor and your business name is literally anything other than your complete exact real name, you gotta file. If you're an LLC or a corporation and you want to use a brand name that's different from your registered corporate name, yep, you have to file. But Chapter 1010, Section 6 does offer some specific exemptions. You're totally exempt if you're a sole proprietor using your exact full legal name. And partnerships? Well, they're exempt if they're doing business under a title that includes the true surnames of all the partners.
Moving right along to Section 2, choosing your name, naming restrictions.
The state definitely enforces some very strict naming restrictions, so you want to get this right. First and foremost, you absolutely cannot use corporate endings like Inc., Corp., or LLC in your DBA unless your underlying business is legally organized as such. So no, you can't just slap LLC onto your name to sound a bit more official. On top of that, you can't use words that falsely imply your business is affiliated with the military or any government organization. Your name cannot be immoral, deceptive, or scandalous. And finally, it must not cause confusion with previously registered local marks or trade names. Basically, you want something distinctive that clearly identifies your unique brand without stepping on anyone's toes.
All right, Section 3, Registration Guide, the 4 steps to file. Let's move to and see how this builds, because securing your certificate is actually a pretty straightforward 4-step process. Step 1 is searching for name availability. Since there's no central database, remember, you should check the state's corporate database, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database, and, crucially, you've got to ask your local clerk if the name is already being used in your specific town. Step 2 is obtaining the specific business certificate form from the clerk of the city or town where your business is physically located. Step 3 is completing that form. Now pay close attention here. The form actually has to be executed under oath. That means you either have to sign it in person right in front of the city or town clerk or have your signature notarized. And finally, step 4 is just filing it locally and paying the fee. But hey, remember that massive Massachusetts quirk I mentioned earlier? 351 municipalities means 351 totally different processes, forms, and fees. Because this whole thing is managed entirely at the local level, the requirements literally wildly vary depending on exactly where your office is situated.
Some towns are totally fine with mail-in forms, some require you to show up in person, and some even ask for proof of a home address or residential street listing if you're working out of your house.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the costs change drastically right across town lines. State law technically defaults the clerk's fee to $1 single, but it allows cities and towns to override that default, and practically all of them do. In Boston, the filing fee is $65, but if you're an out-of-state resident doing business there, it's an extra $35 plus a 2.5% service fee if you use a card. Head over to Brookline and it's $100 for residents and a whopping $150 for non-residents. Burlington is $40, Newton is $35. You get the idea, right? You absolutely must check with your specific local clerk to know your exact costs.
Okay, Section 4, Avoiding DBA Mistakes. Don't fall into traps.
So the crucial point here is really understanding what a DBA actually does and, honestly, more importantly, what it doesn't do. A DBA is purely a public disclosure document. It does not create a separate legal entity, which means it offers absolutely zero limited liability protection for your personal assets. If your DBA gets sued, well, you get sued personally. Furthermore, filing a local business certificate does not give you exclusive rights to that name. It won't protect your name from being used by someone else in the very next town over. If you want liability protection, you're going to need an LLC or a corporation. If you want exclusive name protection, you need a state or federal trademark.
Another massive mistake we see is people simply skipping the filing altogether, just because they think it's a minor local formality. Well, under Massachusetts law, failing to file a required business certificate is punishable by a fine of up to $300 per month for every single month you are in violation. Ouch. Even worse, operating without a required certificate can actually block you from enforcing your business contracts in Massachusetts courts. So, skipping this one small local step can literally lead to a massive legal headache.
Moving on to Section 5, Renewals and Keeping Compliant.
So this definitely isn't a set-it-and-forget-it kind of task. Business certificates in Massachusetts generally expire after 4 years. When they expire, you have to go through the whole renewal process and pay the fee all over again. Also, you have an ongoing duty to keep the public record accurate. If you end up closing the business, you've got to file a statement of discontinuance. If you move the business to a new location, or let's say a partner withdraws, you must file an amendment. Oh, and a quick tip for those of you working out of your houses. Filing your DBA doesn't automatically mean your business complies with local zoning laws. You might also need to check with your local building department for a separate home occupation permit.
And finally, Section 6, Conclusion and Disclaimer, Final Thoughts.
So, are you ready to officially claim your brand space in your Massachusetts town? Well, the localized maze of 351 different town clerks might seem totally quirky and maybe a little daunting at first. You now have the exact roadmap to conquer it. You know how to check your name, find your local clerk, prepare your notarized paperwork, and avoid those painful fines. You are entirely ready to step up, legitimize your brand, and officially claim your space in the Massachusetts business community.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I do need to read our legal disclaimer. The information provided in this explainer is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Because local ordinances change and business structures vary so much, viewers should absolutely consult a local legal professional or their town clerk for their specific situation. And here is a final provocative thought to leave you with today. If registering your trade name is this incredibly localized in Massachusetts, what other hyperlocal zoning or permit laws might your new business be missing right now? Stay curious, keep researching, and always ensure your brand is built on a rock-solid legal foundation.